Coffee is for leaders.
Too many CEOs go, oh yeah, let's go get those sales. What's it going to cost to get those sales? You know, they're obsessed with bigger, top line, bigger, top line, bigger, top line, bigger, when they should be obsessed with the bottom line, bigger. That doesn't, as you know, doesn't necessarily equate to a bigger top line, doesn't necessarily bring a bigger bottom line.
Steve, welcome to the show. Great to have you. You are the president and CEO of Miller Ingenuity. Tell us what Miller Ingenuity is and how you came to be the president and CEO. Let's start simple.
Well, Miller Ingenuity is a global supplier of all kinds of products and systems from very high technology to very low technology and kind of everything in between. So we're a little bit unique in that respect because most organizations are either high tech or they're low tech or there's something in the middle, but they're not all three of them, which we are. We've been in business in our 78th year. In fact, we just celebrated our 75th anniversary 2 or 3 years ago, and we sell in over 100 countries. Now, I've been the CEO for 26 years now, so about a third of the life of the company I've been at the helm. And, you know, I got this job like a lot of people do. I was called by a headhunter one day, and I was a divisional general manager for a large industrial automation company with P&L responsibility, but I wasn't a CEO. And they said, how would you like to come to this little company in a little town in Minnesota and be our CEO? And I said, I don't think so. So I turned him down. And as it turned out, they hired a guy. He didn't work out so well, so they fired him in 3 months. Yeah. And so then they called me back and they said, well, you know, the guy that we hired because you didn't want it didn't kind of work out. And would you be willing to consider it? So I said, yeah, because, and you know this, Clint, when you get a shot at being a CEO, you take it. I don't care where it is. I don't care what it is. I don't care how complicated it is. It's something you just don't pass up because those opportunities, as I'm sure you know, don't come up very often. So I took the job, and the company, since I've been there, I've grown the EBITDA over 7 times. So the shareholders and the board are pretty happy with me, and it's been a long and arduous journey because there were a lot of changes that had to be made, and I'm sure you've spoken with other guests about the complications of changing an organization. And so I had that in spades. So that was 26 years ago.
So that's incredible. And what an incredible, 7 times EBITDA. Wow. That's unbelievable.
That's a pretty big number.
That's wonderful. So congratulations on that. Give me a sense for what you've learned about leadership during that time and what it means to come into a company that's been established. I mean, now this is your company, 26 years, my word, you know, but like, when you first come in, what does it mean to change, the culture of a company and get them on a path where they can do 7 times EBITDA over 26 years?
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I'll mention is we haven't used any outside capital to do that. So that makes that number even more extraordinary. We didn't have to borrow.
So wait, before you go to answer the question I just how have you funded? How has the business been funded?
Well, with internally generated cash and 2 or 3 acquisitions along the way. I think we borrowed maybe $800,000 once to get a smaller acquisition many, many years ago. We didn't need to borrow the money because we had the cash, but we chose to. And so it was mostly internally generated cash. And you sort of take a step at a time, and then you take another step, and then you generate the cash that you need to take the next step. And one of the things I've learned in my career is cash is king. Cash is everything. I mean, if you work for a big multinational corporation, a Fortune 500 company, which I have, they like play with monopoly money. They don't have to worry about, am I going to make the payroll this week? And, you know, how do I fund my CapEx purchases and that sort of thing? And so you just, you know, you grow not by leaps and bounds, but by one step and then another step, and then you fund it and you do another step. And it took 26 years to get there, but the shareholders are pretty happy that that's how we did it. And I'm sorry, what was your question again?
No, that's my fault. Sorry, I was just so stunned by building a business the old-fashioned way that I wanted to stop there. I was talking about what you learned about leadership and what it means to come in and build a culture and set a company on the right path.
Culture is everything. And you probably know this yourself. 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, if you stood in front of a bunch of CEOs and talked about the importance of culture, their eyes would glaze over. And they go, yeah, culture schmaltzer. Tell me how to, the marketing stuff and the engineering stuff and buying companies and all that. Now they pay a little more attention to culture because culture, everything in a company starts with the culture. And I tell CEOs this all the time. The first thing you have to do is build your culture and build it right before you do anything else. Because if you have a killer culture, which we have, then you can do anything. If you don't have a killer culture, you really can't do anything. And when I first came into the organization, and this is true of every organization that I've led, at the beginning, the culture wasn't that good. In some cases, it was a lot worse than others. And you have to decide what kind of values, which are the underpinnings of all culture, what kind of values do you want? And then you have to put in all of the organization processes and procedures to support that and sustain it. That's not what a lot of companies do. When they're trying to build a culture, they go, I'll give you an example. We love teamwork. Teamwork is everybody's got to have teamwork. And yet they will individually assess people's performance. They won't assess a team's performance. They'll assess individuals' performance. And yet they will say to the manufacturing guy, as an example, if you get that product out the back door, you've done your job and we're happy. No, that's not right. It has to be out the back door with quality and so forth. So you have to build your culture kind of one plank at a time. And it's tough stuff. It's really tough stuff because no organization, I don't care whose it is, no organization wants to change. They just don't. They usually don't think they need to. They don't want to. All the inertia is built up in a certain direction, and they don't want to change that. And you can't even, a lot of times, figure out what that culture is. So the first step you have to do is, what kind of culture do I have here? Well, how do you do that? One, by observation, obviously. I'd walk into the factory and I'd see people just sort of not doing much and not being very energetic and not moving around much. And, I've been in so many factories in my career, Clint, I can smell a bad factory. I just can't. And so, and the other way you assess the culture is get some professional help. I had an industrial psychologist that I've used for many, many, many years, and he designed a survey. And then you send the survey out to every single person in the organization. You ask questions about the culture. It has to be anonymous now because you don't want them guessing what the right answer is. And then once you get all that done, you go, this culture values this. This culture doesn't value that. It values this and not other things. And so then you have to align what you want the culture to be with the organization. And you got to start that. Say you're a CEO, you got to start with your first direct reports. I can't, and I don't want to reach down to the bottom of the organization and start changing things there. If my first line of leadership is in tune with the culture and in agreement with the culture and they know what to do, they'll do it. If they're not, you got one choice. You try to convince them of why we have to do this. What's the good that'll happen when we do it? What's the bad that will happen if we don't do it? And then if they don't want to do it, you got to take them out one at a time, one level at a time. And that's the nasty stuff. I'll give you an example. In a period of about, and this takes a long time. You don't do this in most CEOs go, okay, boom, boom. As long as I can get it done in 6 months, I'm fine. You're talking years to change a culture and build a culture. As one example, we have very high technology factory in terms of people and processes. We don't have any supervisors per se in the factory. Our people know what they have to do. They decide what they're going to do. They go do it. They have access to the inventory. They pull the inventory that they need. They know what products has to be built today, and they do it. And nobody tells them how to do it. Now, you dial back 26 years, and they could care less. I mean, if you didn't tell them exactly what to do, they wouldn't do it. And so you have to have a culture that, by what I call by design, not default. You need to make sure you build the blocks that you want, and then the people who aren't going to go along with it, and there will be some, you just have to take them out.
So basically, what you're saying, like every employee is a supervisor. How do you instill that? Like you brought in the industrial psychologist. How do you instill like employees caring to that level to where they're going to do the right thing for the company, for themselves every single time?
Well, that's a good question. It starts with the hiring process. let's say you've already called out the ones that don't want to do this, and sometimes people in a company don't want to do what's right because they aren't treated right, and so you sort of can't blame them. And so one of the first things I did for people in the factory is I raised all their wages because they were below market. But then I said, with the raise in wages, there's a raise in expectations. Couldn't do one without the other. And over the course of, we turned over the entire factory inside of 5 years, every single one, because not a one of them wanted to do and be what we wanted them to do and be. And then it starts with the hiring process. As an example, once you have your culture set, don't ever let anybody in the front door that can wreck it or that spoils it or doesn't agree with it. So when, as an example, again, in the factory, since we have no supervisors, the coworkers that this person will work with interview this person. The lawyer is going to say, no, I can't do that because, legal responsibility. And I'm fine. I understand all that. And they decide whether they're going to hire this person or not because only they know if that person will fit in the culture or not. And once you've established what those values are and the people that surround them, because as another example, everybody gets paid. There's only one metric in a business that means a thing. Now, I know, the quality guys are going to go, yeah, you got to have best quality, and the engineering guys are going to have this. Only one metric means a thing in a for-profit company, and that's profit. That's it. So we align the entire organization on one goal, that goal of meeting the operating profit budget for the year. Now, sub-departments will have sub-goals, but if we don't hit that profit number, nobody gets an incentive. Not a single person, not me, not anybody else in the organization. And if we hit that profit, everybody gets an incentive. So it aligns this seems simplistic, but it aligns the whole organization on the one number that makes sense. So when you get the manufacturing guy goes, well, I'm just going to ship it out the back door. I don't care if it's profitable or not. We don't have any of that. Or the quality guy who might step in and say, little problem with the quality here. Can't let that get out the back door. He'll take care of that upstream because they're all engaged in the same metric of profit. And it's really, and I've got all kinds of arguments. I've heard every last one of them. And why, that's a dumb idea. It never works. I've tried it. Doesn't work. It does if you allow it to work. But you have to let people know where you are every month on the number. Every month, everybody in the company knows. Actually, every day, everybody gets an orders report, including me. And every month, everyone knows where we are in relation to our operating income budget. Give you a perfect example how powerful that is, Clint. One time, many years ago, it was December. We're on a calendar year. It was December, and we were in danger of not hitting the budget. And I was walking through the factory, and a guy in the factory came up to me, and he said, I'm a little worried about not making the budget this year. Is there anything that you can think of that I could do to make that happen? Now imagine that. A guy in the factory cares about profit. Well, it's not because of philanthropy. It's because he's got money getting in his pocket if we hit the number, and he doesn't if we don't. So it's a powerful way to give people a reason to care about your company. Second thing is, you have to have really terrific leaders who care about the people that they're leading, care about. And in my company, we are family oriented, and everybody knows if you talk to anybody in my organization, they'll tell you that I will always say your family comes first. If you have a conflict between family and work, family comes first. Now, if you're hiring the wrong people who might want to take advantage of that, that's a different situation. But you put all that together and people feel like they're working for a caring organization that has their interests in heart. And the other thing we do, we're big into philanthropy in the community, and that attracts a certain kind of person. We have a committee of employees that decide how to distribute charitable funds every year, and so it sort of all hangs together.
Why is that important to you? Why is being engaged in the community outside of your business important?
Well, that's a good question. It's important to me because I think we owe the community that we earn our living in to pay them back. Now, I know all the arguments about, shareholders don't care about that. You just distribute the profit and the shareholders can decide on that. But my shareholders agree with me that the company should do that. And it's a twofold benefit. One is we're viewed as a super spectacular company in the community. Everybody knows who we are. I have no trouble recruiting people because we're always in the media about this philanthropy, this award, that whatever, and in the competitive environment that we've been in, labor environment for the last, as I'm sure you know, last 2 or 3 or 4 years, everybody else in the community has to pay extra, and they still can't get the kind of recruitment success that we get. We don't have any trouble at all. I don't pay the highest in the world. You're not supposed to. That's not necessarily the smart thing to do, but I have no trouble recruiting people.
And they like coming to work for that reason, right? They'll take, like, it doesn't have to be the highest in the world because there's more meaning to their job than just the paycheck, right? That's what you've accomplished here. You've accomplished meaning.
That's exactly right. I can't remember the author of the the book called Meaning at Work, but it gives them a reason to be at work besides just making the widgets and doing the widgets. And that attracts a certain kind of person. Because of our philanthropy, that attracts a certain kind of person. Now, if you ask me to define exactly what that kind of person is, I'm not sure I could tell you, but it's a kind of person who cares about the community, cares about his coworkers. And I'll give you an example. Years and years and years and years ago, there was a massive flood in our area, and one of my employees lost his whole house in the flood. We were getting ready to have the annual company golf outing where people get the day off, free golf, liquor, hamburgers, and all that kind of stuff. And they came up to me and they said, if we would be willing to forego the golf outing this year, would you put the money that you would have spent toward Jesse so he can rebuild his house? Now that's the kind of teamwork and camaraderie that money can't buy. And we did, because if I'd have said, no, I'll just do it anyway, it was the principle of it, because of the camaraderie and the teamwork everybody has.
That's remarkable.
It's a remarkable culture.
Yeah, that culture that you have built is unbelievable. Give me a sense for what a typical day looks like for you then.
Well, that's a really good question. My typical day, and this would not be so unusual for other CEOs you talk to, is, tell me what time you want me to start. Tell me what time you want me to stop. I mean, the last thing I do before I go to bed at night is I get on my email. I always, immediately after the orders report comes out, I plunge into that. Sometimes that's at 6 at night. Sometimes it's 7 in the morning. First thing I do in the morning when I get up, check my emails, check the orders report. We're a global business, so things come in, all times of the day and night. And then I spend most of my day thinking about futures, because I've got a killer leadership team. My sales and marketing guy knows exactly what he's doing. Very seldom does he ever have to ask me about something. My engineering and operations guys, they know exactly what they're doing, and I gather them together once a month for a complete business review, everything from the top to the bottom. Sales, orders, new product developments, margins, this, that, you name it, and we take a deep dive. It takes most of the day. Rest of the month, I let those guys do their thing. If they need to talk to me, they will. And every now and again, of course, I'll just talk to them. So I spend most of my time on, okay, what is in the future, especially in the last 2 or 3 years? That's been like really tough. What is in the future? How do we prepare for it? And then one of the biggest components of my job is to manage the board. That may sound like I'm not the chairman, but I'm sort of like the de facto chairman because I've been leading the board forever. And if I don't prep them, if I don't get things in line so they can understand them, because that's a very uninvolved board. They come together once every quarter. If we have a meeting, it's an hour and a half, and we're done. And it's important to have them have enough communications and enough involvement, but not too much involvement, because then things kind of go sideways.
Yeah. Board management is a very interesting topic. How have you learned that over the years, like that interesting and important balance between here's everything that's happening that you need to know and keeping them kind of at arm's length on the day-to-day operations?
Yeah, that was tough. I'd never managed a board before I came here. I didn't have to when I was for the Fortune 500 company. And I sort of managed by, first of all, I'm a control freak. I'm not about to let anybody get their fingers in my operation. This is me. Well, that's how I started out. And I made some mistakes in the beginning with the board, and the board has turned over a few times since then, not completely, but in segments of it. where I didn't think they had the right, nor did I want them to have any particular piece of information or decision making. So a couple of times I got my knuckles slapped over that, and that's fine. Then I started to understand, here's the hallway the board wants me to be in, like this. Here's the hallway way out here that I want to be in. And I'm sorry, neither one can have it that way. So you sort of come in and meet in the middle. And then, of course, the more successes you have, the more hallway the board gives you and the more confidence they have in you, and say, okay, Blue says this, it must be right. Look at what he's done in the last 26 years. And so I think success is probably the biggest reason the board lets me. And, you have to have codified limits of authority. Okay. I know, even though it's not codified, that I can't buy a company without getting the board's approval. I know that. Okay. I know I can't sell a major product line without getting the board's approval. I know that. That seems sensible to me, And I know as long as I stay within an approved operating budget, I can do anything I want within that. And that's what was most important to establish with the board. You just approved the budget in aggregate, right? Sales, margins and income and all that kind of stuff. Then you got to leave me alone. You don't get your fingers in the because it's so complicated, Clint, as I'm sure you know. There are so many moving parts, and someone who's not engaged in the business would really screw it up if you gave them the chance.
I love how obvious it is when I talk to somebody like you as a CEO, and how complicated other CEOs make it. You know what I mean? It really kind of is as simple as you're laying it out, but you have this ability, it seems to me, to be very clear and direct and get buy-in from folks, so you don't have to deal with everything that would come from doing this without telling anybody, or kind of going, you know what I mean, on your own way. It seems like you figured out the communication patterns pretty well.
That's really important, because if a CEO can't manage the board, he or she will be a failure, an absolute failure. They'll either get fired because they did something stupid that they shouldn't have done, or and I say this to CEOs all the time. if the board gets their fingers in your pie and they screw something up big time, they're not going to blame themselves. They're going to blame you, Mr. CEO. So don't let them ever do that.
Yeah. How is all of this tariff stuff affected you? I mean, you're obviously doing business globally and shipping and all that stuff. How have you thought about it?
Well, that's a good question. I've been around such a long time. I don't overreact to anything, and I don't react to most things. And my board, I got a few calls from my board. I don't know, whenever it started, whenever that was, or whatever the threat was there. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I said, I'm not doing a thing until there's something to do something about. And in the beginning, okay, we were withholding shipments from China. We get a lot of raw materials and certain parts of our product, and we just leave it there in the port. Don't take it, because I don't know what my cost is going to be until I release that shipment, right? So we had and still have, I don't know, probably a year's worth of inventory at current cost. So I have some room to maneuver. And well, sure enough, it was up, it was down, it was this, it was that, it was China, it was this. And if you run around with your hair on fire, you go crazy, right? So I just waited, and about now, at least we're at the point where now I got a 90-day window where my costs are certain. Just to use China as an example, my costs are certain out of China, and so then my guys will make a decision. Oh, do we want to expedite some shipments? Do we want to expedite some manufacturing? Where do we have wiggle room to raise cost? Price. Some places you do, some places you don't. And so they will very likely conclude, let's get a bunch of stuff in here in the next 3 months because it's certain. And we don't know what will happen after that. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does. And it's always a mistake, especially for a CEO, to react to something when you don't know what's going to happen. So in my career and in my time in leadership, I've learned to I wasn't always that way. I mean, you can probably figure I'm a, get it done like right now guy, but I just sat back and waited until now there's a window open and we'll probably take advantage of it. And I don't know what happens in 90 days.
Right. Yeah. That's really interesting too. And again, it seems simple, but it does seem like a lot of CEOs overreact to news. and markets and, things of that nature. And maybe some CEOs obviously should overreact to those things. But for the most part, it does seem like you should wait and figure out where things are going to land before jumping into kind of sweeping changes, right?
Right. And you have to know, okay, if this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do that. If this happens, so we know exactly based on different cost scenarios and different contractual relationships we have on the sales end with our customers, we know exactly where it would be in A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's nothing to do until we get to A, B, C. But when it's time to do something, as a CEO, you have to have clarity on what it is you're going to do and what is it going to cost you. Too many CEOs go, oh, yeah, let's go get those sales. What's it going to cost to get those sales? They're obsessed with bigger, top line, bigger, when they should be obsessed with the bottom line, bigger. That doesn't, as you know, doesn't necessarily equate to a bigger top line, doesn't necessarily bring a bigger bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because the more you spend from that top line, you could have a much worse bottom line because of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. One thing I was you might ask me about this. One of the reasons I'm so obsessed with cash is I spent 7 years in a turnaround. And I would highly recommend that for anybody early in their career. So it was one of the most terrifying 7 years I ever spent. We had to make choices between paying the utility bill or making payroll. I mean, that's how critical it was. And I had I was a divisional general manager. I worked for a president that all he wanted to do was spend his time talking strategy, futures. And he would bring in consultants. He'd take us all off site and talking about, the strategic plan of the next 5. And I'm thinking, are you flipping kidding me? But why, Clint? They do that because in that situation, the president is ugly and they don't want to face the present. And strategy. Did you ever see anybody have a strategy that says we're going to fail in 5 years, we'll be broke and out of business? They don't make them like that, right? That's not how you make a strategy, but it's a happy place. So that's where people spend time that they shouldn't. I'm not saying you shouldn't do strategic planning, but let's face it, strategic planning beyond a year or 2 years, you can't know what's going to happen in 3 years. So what do? They make a big thick book, and this is our strategic plan for the next 5 years, and the shareholders will go, yeah, stock price will go up, right? Because that's a really good plan. Stick it on the shelf. Nobody pays any attention to it until next time for strategic planning. Yeah, I don't mean to bleed all over strategic planning, but you got to make payroll today, no matter who you are, no matter what your plan is.
Yeah, I think again, it seems like common sense, but for some reason, so many CEOs get lost in it. You co-authored a book called Unlocking Success alongside Jack Canfield, who's tell us about Jack and why you decided to publish this book. It looks like it was published the beginning of this year.
It's my second book I published with Jack. And if you've ever seen Jack, have you ever met Jack?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever seen him on TV or whatever, when he's doing his commercials or whatever, and he's doing his seminars? He just seems like a really nice, genuine, down-to-earth guy. And he really, really is. When I first met him, he was so gracious and so kind and so accommodating. I couldn't believe I was talking to Chicken Soup for the Soul guy. I just couldn't believe it. In fact, I'll be out in LA with my wife for the premiere of the book in I think September, and Jack will be there, and he will spend lots of time with me and my wife and other people that are there for the same reason. And I met somebody who knows somebody, right? I know a guy by the name of Nick Nanton. He owns I think it's called Celebrity Branding. They're based out of Orlando. He's a filmmaker. He does all kinds of films. He writes all kinds of books. A really cool guy. He started as an entertainment lawyer in Hollywood. That's probably how he ended up knowing Jack. And he said once to me, "Would you like to do a co-authorship with Jack?" I said, "You kidding me, right? It's a joke." He said, "Well, I don't hook him up with just anybody, but I've been doing business with Nick for many, many years. He's published a couple of my other books." And he said, "Yeah, Jack likes you and likes what you do and likes what you've done. He will agree to it." And so that's kind of how it happened.
That's incredible. So
Seems
tell us
simple
about
and easy.
Yeah, that's simple. It's simple, super simple. Tell us, give us a sense for what unlocking success is about.
Well, it's there's 3 or 4 stages to unlock massive success in a company, like 9 times, 7, 8 times EBITDA success. One of them is you have to transform the culture. That's easier said than done, as we just talked about. Then you've got to unleash creativity in your organization. That sounds easy too, but it's not. Okay, if you're Apple, you get all kinds of creativity in your organization, but a lot of manufacturing companies don't have that. And then third, once you've got that and you've got a suite of killer creative products to unleash, you've got to do some really creative marketing. That's basically what the whole book is about. I'll give you an example. Most manufacturers, the high-tech ones, only high-tech ones might be a little different. Most manufacturers, how do they go to market? Well, they have a website. Good. They go to trade shows. Okay. And then they send the sales force out, with the message, go sell this. All right. And the trade shows is a perfect example. I hate trade shows because nobody can show me the ROI on a trade show. I don't know any salesman, even mine, that could show me you got to be there. Everybody's there. And trade shows are generally for the old boys in the sales network to get together with their buddies, other sales guys, and their customers and drink and eat in the company. I'm sorry, that's sort of what it is. So you have to take a different approach to the trade shows than would normally be done. I'll give you a perfect example. When we go to a trade show and we have something new to sell, we don't just wait for the customer to walk in the booth. We have the most attractive girl you will ever find. She goes out and I'm not kidding. She goes out and gets them, brings them into would you like to see? Who's going to say no to an attractive woman, right? Brings them in, sits them down on a director's chair, offers them a cool glass of water, gives them an iPad, and gives them like a 3-minute process on what it is. And then she brings over the sales guy and he does his thing. And then after this guy is ready to go, we get him on video. And some of them aren't comfortable with this, a lot of them are. And so, what did you think about that product? And so we have a whole completely different way of marketing and selling our products than our competitors do. So if you're going to act just like your competitor and your marketing and sales, you might as well. You got to find a different way that your competitor is not using, an effective way. And there are a million of them out there. Don't just do what everybody else does, because then you'll get what everybody else gets.
Yeah. How are you thinking about AI? How is it changing your business so far? How are you integrating it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've said before, it's not a new thought, that if you don't get on the AI train, you're toast. Point in time. Okay, we've already integrated the easier stuff, right? In customer service and predictability of, incoming orders and inquiries and all that kind of stuff. That's the easy stuff. The harder stuff to do will be, and the hardest, I think, for a manufacturer will be the and new product development. If your competitor uses AI very effectively, and as you know, new product development is very tough. I mean, 90% of all new product developments fail. That's a lot of money that goes down the drain, right? And the competitor that finds a way to do that, probably through AI, that is more cost effective than you, or has more success rate than you do, then you're going to be out of business. And that's the area that we're looking at right now. Very, very difficult to figure that out. But I think every manufacturer has to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And how you integrate it internally and all that type of stuff. I mean, man, and it changes all the time. So, that's a big one that, I think a lot of CEOs are going to be focused on. Sounds like you've got a good handle on that.
It's tough stuff because people are afraid of it. The robots are going to rule the world and kill us.
Yeah, particularly in manufacturing, right? Like robots will be able to do all.
We've got a bunch of robots already. We've been using them for years, and here's the key to using robots. You've got to make sure that you're comfortable with promising and delivering on. No one is going to get laid off because of the robot, and they have to believe you. And ours, because I don't know how many robots we've got out there. We've been putting them out there for 3 or 4 years. Nobody got laid off. Okay, how do you know? If there's a massive recession, I may have to go back on that. But in the meantime, it's like, okay, you were going to hire 2 more people. Now that you got the robot, you're not going to hire 2 more people. And so that's the key to Right. And then once you get them comfortable that they're not going to lose their job over a robot, because they have to work with the robots. Robots don't work in a vacuum. And so you want them to be not threatened by the robots. And then when you put in the AI mix, it's, oh my God, they're going to make this guy AI and he'll kill me before on my lunch break. I don't know.
What do you read? And what reading recommendations would you have for CEOs?
I would say my most all-time favorite book, some of your CEOs may not have ever heard of this, is Unleash the Power Within by Anthony Robbins. And that, I think, was original publication was maybe 35, 40 years. And I'm a nut for Anthony Robbins. I've firewalked 3 times. You know, I've bought everything that the guy sells. And that fundamental book formed the basis in terms of getting fired up, getting energized, believing, and then working a really, really, really well thought out, comprehensive plan. Well, that's the key to success in any CEO. So that is definitely my all-time favorite book.
That's interesting. Yeah, Tony is such a fascinating character. We actually had him come speak at one of our events here in Utah a couple years ago. And that guy can speak and stand on a stage for like 8 to 10 hours. Like the energy is just unbelievable.
He's incredible. And one of his latest books, maybe a year or two, I don't remember the title of it, but it's about how you can drill down in every part of your body and get healthier and increase longevity and all that. I can't remember what it was. And he does a lot of things that he talks about in the book in terms of, you know, blood transfusions, you know, all kinds of stuff. I mean, you know, if you listen to everything in the book, you'd know everything about your body, everything about your ancestry, and then you'd want to go kill yourself. You know what I mean? I've done all that. After I read that book, because, you know, most CEOs, and certainly me, I want to keep at it. I want longevity. And so does everyone. But once I started drilling down on every test known to man, everything, and then I'm going to these docs, these not primary care docs, these specialized medicine docs, I was like taking like 25 supplements a day for this and that and the other thing. And it's like, oh my God. So you can take that a bit too far, but I would highly recommend Tony Robbins for anybody. He's got some mastering of business, very expensive ones that he takes people to Tahiti and all that. And I've been to those. They're pretty valuable. I think his enterprise is, I don't know, a couple of $100 million in just revenue. And he's, you know, so when he speaks business, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. He's got a lot of businesses. Finally, just out of respect for your time, we end every interview with the same question. And that is at CEO.com. We believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
Oh, that's an easy one. The guy that I complained about, who was spending time on strategy when we couldn't even pay our bills, he's the guy. It's a very quick story, so I'll tell it. I was working for Allen Bradley, which is now Rockwell International. It's an industrial automation company. And I'd had some quasi-operating roles, but in support facilities, telecommunications, and my primary responsibility, now we're going back 30 years, was in human resources. Well, I didn't like the line guys because I always had to tell them how to manage their people. I had to tell them, bail them on. I just hated that. So I decided I don't want to spend my life in that. And so when I got interviewed for an HR job with the company that I eventually became the president of before this one, I said to him, Stu, I said, I'll take, and the HR job was a mess. I mean, they had a hostile union. It was just an absolute mess. And I said, I'll take the job under one, and I had to negotiate a new agreement and all that. I said, once I do this, that and the other thing, and I'm successful, I want you to give me a shot at a line job. And he did. And that was the biggest single break in my career.
That's incredible.
And a turnaround, no less.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for coming on. We got to have you back because you and I could talk for hours about all sorts of things. Really, what an honor to have you. Thank you. Congratulations on everything you've done in your career. And let's talk again.
Yeah, let's do that. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.